Associate Director of Admissions here at St. George's University. We'll be starting tonight with a wonderful introduction by my colleague, Wendy Mathis, who's joining us from Southern California. We're glad that you're able to take the time out of your schedule to learn more about St. George's University and our School of Medicine. As I mentioned previously, I'm in Napa, California, and my colleagues down in Pasadena. In normal times, we'd be meeting with you folks in person, but we're very excited to be able to have the option to meet with you all virtually. Joining Wendy this evening, we have 3 phenomenal SGU graduates, which Wendy will tell you more about in just a moment. They, along with our colleague Dana Marie from our admissions team, will be standing by to answer your questions. Our goal at the end of this evening is to make sure that all of your questions about SGU and why SGU are answered before tonight's event ends. Additionally, if you're joining us from Facebook, our colleague Josh Tile will be able to answer any questions that you have there. So throughout today's presentation, be sure that you utilize that Q&A function at the bottom of the screen so that you can ask our alumni and our admissions team any questions that you may have. And with that, I'd like to welcome Wendy, who will get us started and introduce our SGU graduates. Wendy?
Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for that great introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. As Emily mentioned, my name is Wendy Mathis. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions, and I am in Southern California. Too bad I can't meet with you in person, but just feel like I'm with you tonight because we're going to be spending some time together. I have some amazing graduates with me to give you some fantastic information on how you can balance medicine and life. I get that question a lot in the field. You're like, Wendy, I want to become a doctor, but I still want to have a family. I still want a life. I want to go to medical school. How can I make it all happen? Well, joining me this evening, I have 3 phenomenal graduates, Danish, Hannah, and Brian. They're going to share with you what they did so that they could balance life and medicine while they were attending school. They're going to share with you what they're doing now and let you know how they're still able to have some kind of fun and sanity during this whole crazy time that we've been going through. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Danish, followed by Hannah, and then Brian. Please, everyone, share where you are, what year you graduated, and what you've currently been up to. Danish, take it away.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Danish Arastu. I attended SGU, graduated in 2016. Did my residency at Arrowhead Regional Medical Center in family medicine, and currently now will be working with Kaiser Permanente.
Hannah? Can you introduce yourself and tell everyone what year you graduated and what you're currently up to?
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for joining. My name's Hannah Nguyen. I was born and raised in California, specifically Southern California. I went to undergrad here, and I went to Grenada for 2 years, and came back here for my 2 years of rotations, and I'm back here again for residency. So I just matched into a psychiatry residency at Arrowhead Medical Center as well, and just graduated this year. So welcome, everybody.
Brian, come on and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Brian Chioda. So I'm originally from SoCal as well. I grew up in San Diego and also went to UC San Diego for undergrad. After that, I attended SGU, where I did the MD MPH program with rotations in New Jersey. And from there, I did pediatric residency in New Jersey, medical genetics and metabolic disorder fellowships in Baylor at Texas Children's. And then last year, I took a position here at the University of Utah as a medical geneticist.
Awesome. Thank you again so much for joining. So what you're going to learn this evening is what led our doctors to choose medicine, how they learned to balance their studies and life while attending SGU, a day in the life of one of our physicians, why having a work-life balance is very important when you are in a career in medicine, and also how do you take time for yourself without feeling guilty. So I'm going to make sure that we go through those topics and you get a lot of feedback and information from our doctors. For you, as you are listening to this webinar, if you have any questions, please feel free to utilize the Q&A box. It'll be open throughout the presentation. We'll be able to answer your questions. Some of those we'll even pull and answer live. And the same goes for my Facebook viewers. I have Josh, who's available to answer your questions as well, and also any live questions that we feel may be beneficial for the entire group. We'll go ahead and address those. So, getting into this, what led you to choose medicine as your career, Hannah?
So for me, I really enjoyed the topic in general. I think medicine's fascinating, and what happens in the body is honestly a miracle. Like people are born, and the fact that we can exist and create things is just super fascinating. And I love medicine because we get to work with people every single day. We get to make a big difference in every person's life. Every patient you're seeing, you know, they're looking at you like for advice. They're looking at you for knowledge, and they're really trusting their life in you. And I just love the fact that I'm able to be here and help other people when they're kind of at their lowest.
And Hannah, what led you to choose SGU as your pathway into medicine?
So for me, SGU was a pretty clear choice. At the time when I graduated undergrad at UCLA, I had a few options to do. I actually took a year to work at a cardiology clinic after undergrad, and then from there, I was kind of weighing my options. So I could have done, a master's program. I could have done a post-bac program or certificate program, or I could have gone to medical school and got my MD degree, and that's what I chose. It was the most direct way and the quickest way to get to my goal of being a doctor, and I have no regrets of what I did.
You know, you said something really important about it being the direct and the quickest way. So many times people are torn. They think that, okay, I need to do all of this extra stuff before I go into medical school. And oftentimes that's just not the case. Just get in and get it done, right?
Right. And I mean, I guess to kind of address the topic of this talk, is like work-life balance. So for me, I was just thinking, I wanted to get on with my life, get my MD degree, start working, and just move on with my life. So it was really, it was a good choice, I think.
Yes, it was, because now you're here and we get to work together. So
exactly.
I'm glad it worked out the way it did. So Danish, for you, why medicine, and how did you end up at SGU?
I think medicine was something I kind of joked about as a kid.
So you sound a little bit like a bear. One of the bears at Big Bear sounds like he's on your back.
Oh, I'm sorry. We got a little traffic in the background. Is it better? Is it now better?
Yeah, it's kind of like growly, kind of.
Uh-oh. Still?
Yeah.
All right. Let me move to another location.
Yeah. So figure that out for a sec. Brian, tell us what led you to choose a career in medicine, and how did you end up at SGU?
So this isn't the story for everybody, but I was one of those people that always just felt like I wanted to be a doctor, even as a young age. I used to tell that to my parents. And so that's not the case for everybody. There's definitely a lot of people I went to medical school with that, had completely different career paths. But for me, it was something that I think I always deep down wanted to do for a variety of reasons. I've always had an interest in science and biology to begin with. And then just having that in combination with being able to work with people directly and help them was something that was just always attractive as a field for me. I did not have any physicians in my family, though. I didn't come from my family were all immigrants to this country. So being first generation here, it was sort of an ordeal to figure out how to get to that place. But along the way, I figured out, how to do it with the help of SGU. I've had no regrets either about it. I really enjoy the work I do today.
Wow, that's amazing. And the fact that you were first generation, and so you had to figure out how to be able to navigate everything to get to medical school is amazing. So if there's anyone who is first generation and your background is similar to Brian's and you have some questions, be sure to drop some questions in the Q&A box so that he can follow up with you. And we'll be giving you an opportunity to connect with him one-on-one as well, because we want to make sure that you get the best information for you. Additionally, we do have someone available who can answer any questions about students who are looking to attend SGU and you're classified as an international student. So I have John, who's on right now, and you can again put those questions in the Q&A and John can answer some of your questions also. Danish, how's everything going?
How does this sound? Is that better?
It's a little better. So yeah, let us know, how did you choose medicine and how did you end up at SGU? Because I know you had an interesting pathway before you got here.
Right. So medicine was just something kind of in the back of my head, is something I always joked about, but wasn't really sure I wanted to do. And so I kind of got exposed to it when I became a phlebotomist. I wanted to see if it's actually really for me. And while I was doing phlebotomy, someone mentioned, like, if you really want to see medicine, what it's about, become a medic, become an EMT or a paramedic. So I did that. I went and did that, and I continued working, got a job at an ER, fell in love with it, and I was going to school undergrad at UCLA at the time. And so a bunch of my friends who were colleagues at UCLA, they ended up going to SGU for medical school. And at that time, you know, going around, people are talking about schools in the Caribbean, and I don't know if you should go to the Caribbean or not. So I did my research. I looked into the pass rate. I looked into how many people get out and get into residency, the location of the school, and honestly, the statistics were better than most of the American schools I was looking at. And I had a bunch of friends that graduated from UCLA that were doing really well. So I ended up following their footsteps and went to SGU as well.
Awesome. And I'm so happy that it worked out the way it did. And I know you had other options, and I'm glad that you chose SGU and you're very active with alumni. So we appreciate everything that you've been doing. So now I want to know from my doctors, how did you learn to balance school and your personal life while you were attending SGU? Brian, tell us some of the things that you did when you were on the island to just make all of this stuff work.
I will say that one of the benefits of attending SGU is that it is easy to separate, working and personal life. So being on what felt like a deserted island, because it is a pretty small island, it was easy with that. When I needed to study, when I needed to get my work done, I was very hyper-focused because I didn't have family around. I didn't have friends that weren't in med school with me at the time. So there weren't as many distractions. So I felt like the time that I did have available to study, I was able to use really effectively, again, because there were no real distractions there. But it is important to take some time off. And I think, especially after exams and, after a semester is over, I definitely recommend people stay on the island for at least a couple of days to enjoy it, because there's so many beautiful parts to Grenada that I don't think all the students, at least a lot that I knew, they were ready to go home as soon as they finished their last test. But the island is so beautiful. There's a lot you can do there. I'm particularly an outdoorsy person, so there's a lot of hiking available, a lot of hidden beaches. There's, of course, Grand Anse, which is the main beach that, all the cruise ships go into and the tourists go to, but there's a lot of hidden beaches that don't even have roads to get to. So it's pretty amazing. There's a volcano. It's not active in the center of the island as well. And there's a bunch of monkeys up there. You can go there, just drive up and start feeding them bananas. So I found doing things like that was always helpful to just, refresh your mind, take a break. And, again, there's not a ton of time when you're in medical school, especially those first couple of years, because you are studying so much. But it is important to take that time off.
And what resources were provided to you from the university to help you be a successful student while you were figuring all this out?
Yeah. So, in terms of taking time away from studying, there's a lot. So there's a lot of organizations where you can participate in activities and meet people that is a good break away from your studies. So there's all sorts of intramural leagues in different sports. There's personal interest things, which may be related to a specialty you're interested in, or it could be something completely separate. It could be related to your identity in terms of like racial identity or religious groups, things like that. So there's a lot of opportunities to connect and meet other people besides studying in the classroom. And there's also help like for the classroom part. So again, for studying, there's a ton of resources. There's DES groups where you get to learn from people who have taken the courses that you are currently in and succeeded. So they will help teach and tutor students that are struggling or just wanting extra help. And there's the professors I just found were also extremely helpful, because most of the professors there are there with the focus to teach, as opposed to doing it as like a side gig for their, research or other activities. I felt like all the professors were there just, to focus and help us as students. And so I found that they had a lot of time to outside of the classroom to answer questions, to me, to answer emails and things like that. So I appreciated that as well at SGU.
Yeah, the staff is really dedicated, and the fact that they're on the island, it's like, where can you go? You can't go anywhere because you're here on the island. So their focus is our students, and we love that. Now, Hannah, so same question. How did you balance school and having a personal life while you were attending SGU? And did you take part in any clubs or anything? And how did you just work all of that out?
Yeah, so I think this is actually a really important topic because, like mental wellness is just as important as your physical wellness and wellness in general. So not only are you taking a break from your studies, you're also refreshing yourself to get back to work when you come back. So it's really important to do, what you need to do, either emotionally, physically, spiritually, whatever it is that helps you get well, so that you can go back and hit the books and study for days on end and get ready for huge tests. So I think it's important to talk about this topic. And for me, it was actually pretty easy to do fun, exciting things in Grenada. I jumped off waterfalls. I went snorkeling and saw, tropical fish. I went hiking in forests. There's one of the most beautiful beaches in the world is in Grenada. Grenada is literally a vacation spot. So there's a lot of fun things to do, especially after tests, like Brian was saying. You have kind of a really nice weekend and a lot of time to go explore and do whatever it is that you enjoy doing. And for me, what I really loved was I love to swim. So I grew up swimming. That's just my thing. And the water in Grenada is absolutely beautiful and it's warm, unlike in California. But I actually ended up starting my own group through the school, a swimming club. We're called SGU Swimmers and Swammers. So I ended up recruiting a bunch of ex-swimmers who were either club swimmers or high school or college or whatever. And we would just go out every weekend and swim in the Caribbean Ocean. And it was the best mental break, best physical break. I felt like I was always relaxed afterwards. And again, it's not only just taking a break from your studies, it's also being refreshed for the next step. So for me, that's what I did. And I think it's just, wellness has to be something it has to be a priority as well. It's not something that you kind of push to the side all the time. It's something that you kind of have to make time for.
You are absolutely correct about that. Wellness must be a priority. And speaking of priority, Danish, who is using some of his time off, and he's up at Big Bear before he starts his new assignment at Kaiser Permanente. So congratulations on that, Danish, as staff physician. Tell us about you when you were studying at SGU. How did you make it all work? How did you still find that balance?
Right. First of all, does it sound better?
I think, based on where you are, this is as good as it gets. And guess what? We are so grateful to have you here. I'll take you growling and all, just like that. You're a Big Bear.
Sorry.
It's all good.
All right. Well, sorry about that. Well, I think it's very important to be connected with your friends and your family. A lot of times when you get into medical school, the rigors of studying and the curriculum, it can get to you. So it's very important to maintain friendships and family and connect with them on a normal, on a regular basis. And when things get rough, they're there for you. So that really does help. And time management. In undergrad, you can be part of a bunch of organizations, studying, working, and all that stuff. But nothing really prepares you for medical school. I remember this one time I went to a dinner and I met a couple of medical graduates. They were doctors, and I was just talking to them, and they said, medical school is really tough. Just mentally prepare yourself. And I said, I'm a scholar here at UCLA. I got a scholarship here. I'm a medic, and I'm part of this group and that group. I can handle it. Da, da, da. And I was so cocky, and I was just so arrogant about it. And then you get to medical school, and you get humbled very quickly. It doesn't matter where you go to medical school. Just in general, medical school is it's a very humbling experience. And so just time manage. And there's no specific way to do it. Everyone has their own way. But it's very important to develop a routine, a schedule. And the more you develop a routine, the more you can factor in things that you need to survive, whether it's exercising, whether it's cooking a nice meal on every Friday or Sunday, or going for a swim in the Caribbean Ocean every weekend. You factor those things in with your study time, and don't forget your friends and family because they'll always be there. So those are the things that will help you, or that help me.
Perfect. And those things are extremely important. Now, in regards to that work-life balance, I know when you're on campus, you're in school, you're in your classes, you have 2 years and you are getting your rhythm going. And then something happens at the end of those 2 years. You begin your clinical rotations. Hannah, how did you go into clinical rotations and then redevelop that balance? Because I know now you're back in the United States and you have a whole different set of responsibilities. So how did you get some type of life and balance going once you got into clinical rotations? Because I know how demanding that was for you.
Yeah, I think it's going to be different for everybody. So everybody has the thing they that kind of makes them feel at home and kind of grounds you. For me, it's my family and also exercising regularly. And going back to what I was saying earlier was making things a priority. So really just making sure that, I make time to go visit my family, make time every day to do, some kind of form of exercise, even if it's just 10, 15 minutes, if that's all the time I have. And that really keeps me sane. Otherwise I just get really stressed and grumpy. And then again, I can't study and I can't go to work. I think it's like Danish was saying, time management. These are important things that you have to do, equally as important as studying and equally as important as, passing your tests and doing your work.
Absolutely. I agree. Brian, once you got into clinical rotations and then transitioned into residency, how did you find that balance? Because I know that was a totally different call of duty.
Yeah, going into residence, every step of the way, like as you mentioned, going from basic sciences to clinicals, and then from being a med student to residency, it's a completely whole new ballgame. And so you do have to adjust pretty quickly, and they don't really give you time for that. Basically, once residency starts, July 1st, you're in and you're responsible. And so, I think I had learned a lot just from getting through medical school, how to handle those situations. And again, it's similar to what's been said already, that one, you have to make sure that you set aside time. So actually, when you're making your schedule for I have to work at this time, study at this time, you also have to include in your schedule when's your time to take a break. Now, residency can be tough because it's not like, oh, I have a class from 8 to 5 today, and then after that, I I can schedule my study, I can schedule my time off residency. It's a little bit harder because, one day you'll have a 24-hour shift. The next day you're supposed to be there at 7 and leave by 5, but you end up having notes and you stay till 8 or 10. So it's hard. I'd say, your responsibility, you always have to take care of your responsibilities, and you'll learn from your hospital and other people how they've done that. But my suggestion would be to again, use the time off that you have. So you are required to have at least 24 hours off a week typically. So use that time to rest and relax as well. And again, go in with a plan. So when are you going to you're going to work from this hour to this hour, finish it, like just be productive. A lot of people, like you probably see in the libraries or elsewhere, even in the hospital happens, you say, oh, I'm going to finish my notes, but then you go and take an hour lunch, or you are talking for 30 minutes out of that hour when you should be working. So I think having good time management and really focusing when you're supposed to work, and then when you're off, focusing on taking the time off. So it's separating the two and making sure you don't mix them up.
Very important advice. I need to take heed of that. When I'm off work, I still check my emails. I hate using my out of office because I still want to be in the mix and know what's going on at work. So I'm going to start following your advice, Brian. When I'm off work, I'm going to be off of work. But speaking of work, tell me, what's your day in the life? Brian, give us an idea of what it's like to be you on a regular Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, so as a medical geneticist, I'd say that we tend to have a better quality of life in terms of hours worked and things like that. So I'd say compared to other specialties, it's not the most stressful specialty, and that's one of the reasons that I like it. So, I mean, a typical day for me, I am a pretty active person, so I usually wake up and run in the morning first. So I usually am up by 6 and I'm out running a few miles every morning before getting to work. Most days, I usually have afternoon clinics, so I usually can roll into work by 9 a.m. I spend those first few hours, answering patient calls, returning results of tests that we've done, messaging, emails, all that type of stuff that takes a lot of time. And then afternoons are usually when I have my clinics. So I see one patient in an hour. The types of patients I see are, again, patients that are suspected to have genetic conditions. So these are rare disorders that are caused by mutations in somebody's genetic code, which can be a huge variety of presentations. So I see patients that have multiple birth defects and deformities. I see patients that have, I take care of a lot of metabolic disorders. So those are inborn errors of metabolism where for genetic reasons, a person may be missing a specific enzyme that causes them to potentially get sick very acutely. And so I see a huge variety of patients of all ages. We're also one of the few specialties that sees from prenatal fetuses to old age adults. So and then after my clinics are usually done by 5. And I usually go home and finish notes and spend time at the house. So, and I take call 1 week a month. So I am currently on call in case you hear an obnoxious loud paging when I'm speaking. That's a pretty typical day for me, I'd say.
Wow, that's great. A doctor who gets to work a 9 to 5, that's totally unheard of. But now, Brian, I do have a question though about the recent restrictions with COVID. Has that really impacted your balance, your work-life balance any? How has that impacted you?
So for me, it's actually helped in some ways because I think hospitals were forced to make adjustments that should have been done beforehand. So one of the things is that now we're focusing a lot on telemedicine visits. So whereas before you pretty much exclusively saw patients in your clinic, Now we have access to doing telemedicine through Zoom and other features. And it's really been a huge benefit to the physicians as well as the patients, because a lot of patients, especially my return visits, I don't necessarily need to examine them in my clinic. I know who they are. I know what their medical history is, their problems, and really I just need to check in and see how they're doing. So having access to telemedicine has made it much easier because I'm able to more efficiently see patients. As opposed to, bringing the patient in, having them checked in, having them get their vitals, having them roomed in the place. And then I find that telemedicine visit in a lot of ways can be more efficient. It's also helped the patients a lot because I work again with rare disorders. I pretty much have patients coming in from all parts of the country. So our group takes care of the entire state of Utah, Nevada, Idaho, and Western Montana. So it's a large area that we cover, and patients can't always easily just, hop on for a 10-hour drive to come see me. So telemedicine has helped a lot with that as well. Luckily, COVID doesn't really affect children much, so I haven't had many patients. So I've not had the unfortunate difficulty of working in an ICU or something like that during COVID, where I know it's much more difficult for those people.
Yes, definitely. Well, I am happy to hear that with everything that happened, it was able to help you become more efficient and utilize telemedicine. I've always been a huge advocate of that. And so I'm really happy that now you're being able to really take full advantage of it. So let's circle to Danish. I see that he switched over to his cell phone. So Danish, let's hear you. Let me hear you.
Hello.
Yay!
All right.
Thank you. You sound amazing. So Danish, a little bit about you. What's your day in the life? And take us through a regular day of what it's like to be you.
Sure. Actually, not too much different than Brian. As a family medicine, I don't do traditional medicine, although I was trained in traditional medicine, which means you do inpatient and outpatient. So my new job, I will be 9 to 5. I'll have nursing staff to answer my messages, so that'll help. But the notes don't go away. I'll have to spend time doing notes. Regularly, you just show up. Patients already roomed. You see them. You have a lunch. You can do some notes during lunch, but it's important to take a break, especially if you're seeing patients all day, seeing anywhere from 20 to 22 patients in a day. You're usually done seeing the last patient about 5:15, and then you head home. Take care of the kids for a little bit, and then get back to doing notes. There's also a lot of notes. What I mean by notes is you talk about, you dictate what you've seen in the patient, with their physical exam, what your assessment is, and then what you want to do for them. And it's basically your way of communicating to other doctors or yourself if you've seen them 3 months later. And if it's a patient you see often, it's very easy. But sometimes you see a patient once a year, maybe once every other year. And it's a quick reminder to you or other physicians, or even nurse practitioners, anyone who's going to take care of them, what you saw them for before and what you're going to see them now. I can speak a little more about what it was like as a resident. You do, as a resident, which Hannah's going to find out very soon, especially as an intern in different departments. Every department has its own schedule. And so you worked ICU during COVID. There was a shortage of doctors, and even if you're on vacation, you got called in. And so you go in, it could be anywhere from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 7 p.m. Really just depends on the department you're in, right? If it's emergency, you're going to be there from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. If you're in surgery, you're going to be there from 4 a.m. to about 6 p.m., 7 p.m. So it really just depends on the specialty. For family medicine, it's mainly like a 9 to 5 in the clinic, and then you go home and do your notes. I'll piggyback off of what Brian said. Telemedicine has helped a lot. When COVID first started, I had all my patients canceled. I had 24 patients scheduled and they were all canceled. So I was sitting there twiddling my thumb as, oh, what do I do? So I actually ended up, and this was right before the surge. So it wasn't like our ICU was completely filled, which eventually did happen also. We switched over to telemedicine and we found out, a good portion, about 25 to 30% of our visits can be taken care of over telemedicine. And we were actually reaching out to more patients than we would normally on a normal basis, because it's very hard for people who don't have a car or means of transportation to get in. And we just pick up the phone and refill their medications, adjust their blood pressure medications, diabetes medications, and so forth. But that's, typically a day in my life.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing it. And thanks for switching over to your cell phone. Appreciate it. Hannah, what's your day in the life, or I know what it will be. It's going to be very, very demanding, but tell us what your day in the life was like before you got to this stage, and also how you were impacted in regards to having that work-life balance with the restrictions due to COVID.
Yeah, so I'll talk about my fourth year medical school experience. So especially during COVID. So I was in my fourth year doing rotations, end of my third year actually. And COVID hit and we went home and did virtual. And I think the school actually did a good job of adapting the curriculum to doing online lectures and still having people participate and still have people taking their exams on time, which was a huge deal. And to be able to finish and graduate on time, they had online proctors, so people were still taking exams just as usual. But as a medical student, so your third year, you are doing your core rotations. So you kind of come in the morning, usually, yeah, it depends on the service, like Danish said, but let's just say for internal medicine, you come in the morning, you pre-round on your patient, which means you go see the patient yourself, you read up on the patient, you find out what happened overnight, and what are they like today, what are their vital signs, what new updates do we have, and then you go see the patient, talk to them, how are they feeling, then you usually come back and write some of the notes, and you present to your senior residents or your attending, and then they kind of give you feedback. Usually they ask you questions about your patients, or they'll have a little teaching points, and so you're kind of able to see what you learned in the textbook in real life, which really cemented a lot of topics for me. And after your clinic hours, which usually end in the afternoon in general, you go home and then you what I did was I studied for my shelf exams, which was after every topic, like after every rotation, you have a shelf exam to take, and that's separate from the board exams. So kind of have to balance between going to clinics and having schedules in the hospital, and still being a very much a student, and learning not only what you're seeing in the hospitals, but also learning what you're supposed to be learning in the textbooks to pass your exams. But yeah, if anybody has any questions about, what medical school routines are like, or really anything, yeah, feel free to put in the chat box. But I am very much in the trenches right now as an intern, and I wish I had that attending lifestyle. Well, I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, I may or may not have hit my 80 hours this week. And it's what I'm doing now as an intern. So I'm a psychiatry resident, but I'm currently on my internal medicine rotation. And right now what it looks like is I come in at 6:30 a.m. I pre-round on all my patients, kind of prep my notes. That takes a little bit of time. I see all my patients. Right now I'm taking care of usually between 7 to 9 patients. See my patients, then I come back and finish up my notes. Then kind of similar to the student schedule, where then I present to the attending what's going on, and kind of update what management, the team has decided to do, and kind of what my ideas are. And then as a team, we decide what's the best care for the patient, what are we doing for the patient. And then after that, we round together as a group. So there's the attending, there's a senior residents, there's the junior residents, which is me, and there's medical students. We round together. And then we come back and we have a morning report. So there's every day there's kind of a lecture or a teaching point that the residents put together. And that's kind of a formal teaching time. And then After that, come back and do more notes, finish up any kind of business we have to do, and at some point leave the hospital. And then there's also call days where you're taking admissions as well. But yeah, that's my life right now, and I'm very much looking forward to getting through this.
Yeah, it's going to be a very exciting time for you. Very interesting. You're going to have some interesting stories to tell me next time I speak with you, Hannah. Now, I hear a lot from Hannah, Brian, and Danish about notes. And if you were really zoomed in and listening, they really talked about notes, taking notes and putting those notes in the system. Now, Danish, when you were going through your studies and working with DES, which is our Department of Educational Services, that's the department that we have that's available to help our students really hone in and develop those note-taking skills. So helping you identify how you learn best, how you absorb information, and they help you to really become a successful student. Danish, how did you really perfect taking notes and also entering those notes in the system? Because it seems like there has to be some time set up where you can really dedicate a big chunk of your schedule to getting all those notes in. And I know how important they are. They have to be accurate. So can you tell us a little bit about that process? Is that something that you really have to plan for at one set time during the day? Do you enter notes throughout the day? How do you manage that paperwork part of the job?
Yeah, so the paperwork part of the job is something you learn to do throughout the day. Basically, you're writing notes for each patient. If you have a very busy schedule and you're seeing 24 patients in a day, it may become quite difficult to do it in between patients, because in order to see 24 patients, you have to see patient after patient after patient without taking a break. And so, for example, what I do is I have my medical assistant make a piece of paper with the patient's name, date of birth, and medical record number on it. And then I want their vitals on that same piece of paper, and then their chief complaint. And I have that paper with me. I don't look at the computer. I don't do any of that stuff, because I believe in actually talking to my patients. And so what I do is I actually sit right in front of them, and I'll just jot down bullet points on my notes. And then that's it. I put that away. And then at the end of the day, once I've seen all my patients, I'll go through each one of those little bullet points that I have for each patient. And then I'll just dictate my notes for each patient. DES, so I know when I was on the island, I think I was on the island at the same time as Brian. I actually took some time off in between, but back then DES and clinical, I think the clinical studies, what they try to teach you, so that you transition into a third year and fourth year medical student. I think Hannah was on the island a lot sooner than me and Brian were, so she could probably talk about it. But they were trying to teach SOAP notes. And SOAP is an acronym: subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. And basically that's what any physician in any field will write. It's more or less that same format. What is wrong with the patient? What did they say? What is your assessment of it? And what's your plan? What are you going to do about it? And so it's nice, from what I've heard from most recent graduates that have come through the island, is that is something they are implementing and teaching now on the island before you get to clinicals. And so when you get to clinicals and you see the patients for yourself, you can practice that. And there is only one way to get good at notes. It's practice. You're going to learn what to say, what not to say, what to omit, how to be concise. And at the end of the day, it's a quick note. It's a very quick note. For the purpose of a note is to communicate what you're doing for the patient. That's all it is. There's nothing more. And what has been done and what is planned to be done. If it's going to be a really long novel, imagine seeing 20 patients in an outpatient setting and reading a long novel for each patient with limited time. You're not going to appreciate the person who wrote the note. You're going to be like, why are you writing what color socks they were wearing and how many stripes they had and what they did for dinner last night? Like, you're really just going to sit there and be very upset. So what you want to do is you want to be as concise as possible with the right word choice to put in those notes. And the only way to do that is practice. So you practice during your first 2 years, you practice more so hands-on during the next 2 years, and you try to perfect it as a resident. So then by the time you become an attending, you're pretty well versed at it.
And since you're already up, Danish, we got a question that came in for you from Ivan. Ivan wants to know, could you describe your first 2 years of medical school study lecture routine while you were in Grenada?
Sure. So lectures start pretty early in the morning. The good thing about SGU is that it live records each lecture. Now I had some friends who would just not go, and they would just play back the lecture, whatever works for you. But my personal advice would be you actually do absorb passive listening, and it does help. Even if you're sleepy, you go there early in the morning, all air conditioned, you wear a sweatshirt. It could be 85 degrees with like 98% humidity outside. You're going to walk in with shorts and a tank top, but make sure you take your sweatshirt because it gets cold. They keep it cold inside. You're going to put your sweatshirt on with your cup of coffee, and you're going to half asleep, half awake, listen to this lecture, knowing full well that it's okay if you only get 50% of the lecture because it's recorded. Then you can go to the library, you can go back to wherever you're staying at, your dorm, your apartment, and then you re-listen to the lecture. You can listen to it 1.5 speed, two speed, but it's the second time you're listening to it. So you have all that information. And then after the lectures, you have your labs. All the lectures are done in the morning, labs are done in the afternoon and evening. And evenings actually are usually free. They're free for you to study, which you'll have a lot of to do. There are DES sessions that you can attend to. I believe they usually start like 5 or 6 p.m. It varies, but that's on campus in the library. You can join study groups, but that's typically how it works. And Hannah, I'm sure you can probably attest to it since you were there much more recently. But lectures are in the morning, and then afternoons are for any type of group study or labs or anything like that. And the evenings are there for you to study and kind of catch up and decompress. Make sure you take time to go have a meal with your colleagues and students, or go out to the gym, to the beach or whatnot. Just take some time for yourself as well.
Thank you. And taking time for yourself is always very important. It helps you to become refreshed so that you can start back studying with fresh ears and eyes and really absorb the information. I want to remind everyone we still have our Q&A box open, so please go ahead and submit those questions. Also, for my people joining us live from Facebook, hi, submit your questions. Josh T is on Facebook, able to answer them. Also, he'll be sending questions over to me to my cell phone, so I'm waiting to see it light up with some Facebook Live questions. So go ahead and get those submitted. Now, Hannah, early on, you talked a little bit about wellness and the importance of mental wellness. Can you share with us, why do you feel that it's important to have a work-life balance, especially when you're working in the field of medicine? I know how demanding that whole the field is and everything that you see on a daily basis. So why is it really important for someone in your position to have that balance?
Yeah, I think the most important reason is that, this is a career and it takes a long time to get to the point where Danish and Brian are, where they're fully practicing, attending physicians, and they have their practice going. And it takes years. It takes at least 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, 3 to 4 years of residency. And so there's something called burnout, which I'm sure everybody's heard of. And it takes a toll. It takes a toll on a lot of people. It takes a toll on me. And it's important to make sure that we prevent the burnout as much as possible. And this is definitely a marathon. It's not a sprint. The point is to get there and be well when you're there. I don't think anything is really worth doing if you're miserable doing it. And so if you kind of let your life, the rest of your personal life, go away and just focus only on medicine, I don't think that's how life works at all. But I think it's just it's a very long and difficult road. There's a lot of sacrifices that everybody has to make to become a doctor. I've missed funerals, I've missed weddings, I've missed birthday celebrations. But for me, being able to kind of balance the things I do love to do, and making sure that I am well, and getting to this point, I think has really been fulfilling in every sense of the word. And I think another important thing is to have a good support system, whether that be friends. Mentors are really, really good. People who have done this before in the past, people that you look up to, people who have been in your shoes. They can give you really, really sound, specific advice that would go a long way. So find those mentors, find the people who love you and who are looking out for you. They're your support system when you have bad days, and everybody has bad days. Sometimes I go home and cry, and that helps, honestly. And then there's people out there that will support you. So I think it's just making sure that this is the thing that you want to do, and making sure that you have the tools, the support system, the wellness to get to there. And I think anybody can do it.
Definitely. I love that. And it's also that old saying, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So you have to make sure that you are replenished so that you can continue to give and help others. Brian, why do you feel like it's important to maintain some type of work-life balance?
It's hugely important for a lot of reasons. A lot of like what Hannah said. If you don't maintain a good work-life balance throughout medical school, and even once you're done, I mean, it certainly does get easier, but it's still something necessary because life does get more complicated as well. I think it's really about your own personal success. So I know a lot of people get stuck in the mentality that, study. And if you spend, whoever spends the most hours studying is going to do better. And that's not always necessarily the case, because you're really not studying effectively if your mind is not refreshed and ready for it. One thing that I think was hugely important for myself getting through medical school is that I always maintained that sleep was really important to me. Like if I didn't sleep well, or I stayed up too late trying to study, my whole next day would be messed up because I would be tired throughout it and I wouldn't be able to focus and absorb the information I needed. So no matter how stressed I felt, no matter how much I felt like I'm not ready for whatever test is coming up, I always made it a priority that I was like, you know what, I did the best I can, and I've got to get some sleep, or it's actually going to turn out worse for me if I try to stay up. I think, I definitely tried that during undergrad, doing all-nighters, and it wasn't a success then. And in medical school, I think it's also important that, because there's not really points where you have the opportunity to really catch up through medical school. If you fall behind, it is really hard to catch back up. So if you lose a day or two because you wanted to stay up all night, whether it's for studying or going out or doing other things, it's really hard to catch up. So making sure that you're well rested was really important. And it's the same thing once you're in your clinicals and working in the hospitals. If you want to be the most efficient and sound person in the hospital, you got to be rested as well. And also, again, taking time for yourself, to refresh yourself, to calm yourself, to realize that, just to take yourself out of that situation, because it's medical school, being in the hospital, it's hugely stressful. There's, so many things going on. And everything in that moment will seem like it's the most important thing, but you have to focus on yourself, because like I tell all of the parents of my patients that if you don't take care of yourself, you're not taking good care of your children. You have to take care of mom and dad first, and then you can take care of your child. If you're not well, then your child's not going to be well. And I think that's true for people as well. Take care of yourself. If you want to be a good doctor, you got to make sure that you're well taken care of.
It's very important, Brian. And, it's like what they say when you're on the airplane, right? They tell you to do what? Put your mask on first before you help others. So you have to remember that can't help anybody if you're passed out. So very good points. Danish, for you, why do you feel like it's important to have that work-life balance? And I know, especially with you having such an aggressive schedule when you were in residency and trying to still make time for your family, tell us why that balance is really important when you do have a family in medicine.
Yeah, I think Brian hit the nail on the head. You can't help others unless you help yourself. And the rigors of medicine are many. And especially during COVID, it not only is it just physically taxing, it also becomes emotionally and mentally taxing. Dealing with families of past ones and stuff like that, and notifying people. So this is all fairly recent phenomenon with COVID, but even prior to that, luckily I was able to do 2 years of residency even before COVID ever came into our lives. But there's days where you just are just mentally and physically exhausted, and at the end of it, we're humans also. And you have to realize there is a capacity that we can function to, and after that you hit a breaking point. And you're not going to be an effective doctor, teacher, policeman, fireman, whatever, unless you take the time to replenish and recharge. And so for myself, if I have time off, just like Ryan, I need my sleep. I absolutely need my sleep. I need to make sure that I'm eating right. And so making decisions as to what you eat, it's not always easy, but try to have a good diet. And then as far as time goes off to make time for family, it's nice to have a supportive family that they understand you have a very difficult schedule. But as time permits, I would see them often, as often as possible. But it takes an understanding family to deal with the rigors, and it's not always possible. Even if you have a day off, like you have one day off a week, it's not always possible to attend those family obligations, because that takes work. And sometimes all you need is your bed. You just need your bed and maybe some TV, some ice cream and a pizza or something. So don't feel guilty. I guess the takeaway message is, don't feel guilty about taking time for yourself, because it is absolutely necessary. And I don't think anyone else will ever understand the need to have that rest and rehabilitation unless they've gone through it themselves. And so any medical student, any resident, any attending will attest to that. Sometimes you just need time for yourself, and don't feel guilty about it. So do it.
So let's stay on that topic a little bit, Danish, about feeling guilty, because sometimes as humans, we do feel guilty for doing certain things, even though we know it's right and we know that it's needed. So how can people, those joining us, take that time off or have that balance and not feel guilty about it, even as they're completing their undergrads, they're preparing for medical school? Like, how can they get in that mindset?
Right. So I'll talk about that, I guess, on a personal level. So I have two younger daughters, and when you have a day off, it's an innate feeling of guilt, like, oh my God, like I should be taking them to the park, I should be taking them to the beach, and I should be going somewhere. But when you try to do it, but you're trying to be there in the moment, but you're just so exhausted. You're so exhausted, and you're just no fun. You're like, Daddy, it's not fun because you're not jumping around with us, or you're not doing, you're not jumping in the water with us. And then that carries over, that exhaustion carries over, and then you realize you're just not being effective in anything that you're doing. And so sometimes it's necessary to say, listen, in order to be the best version of myself, I need to have full charged batteries in whatever capacity that is, whether it is as a medical student, as an undergraduate student, as a resident, as a doctor, firefighter, policeman, whatever it is. The best version of yourself will be when you're well rested, well hydrated, good nutrition. And so you just have to have a moment of reflection with yourself, and really understand what are your limits. You have to know your own limits. And when you're kind of reaching that limit, you have to say, listen, I need to take some time for myself to replenish so that I could offer my uh, I can offer the best version of myself to whether it be your kids, your patients, your colleagues, your students, whatever it is. And so I had to have that moment of reflection, and I had to kind of deal with it and say, listen, and communication's important. You got to communicate. If you just disappear out of the people's lives that mean the most to you, I don't think it'll be appreciated. But just honest communication will go a long way. And if you communicate and take the time for yourself and kind of say, listen, I need this, and I can't do it while feeling guilty at the same time, you'll realize the time that you do spend with your family and friends, or whoever, loved ones, it'll be more meaningful, and it'll be more fruitful.
Thank you. Very good points to share. Now, Hannah, as our most recent graduate, I have a question for you. So Danish mentioned knowing those limits. And I want to talk with you about that because ironically, we just got a question in from Malika who wants to know, how often do students struggle to balance medicine and life? Can you talk about that and also talk about how people can identify those limits? Because it's great to say know your limits, but how do you know the limit if you don't know the limit? So how can some of our attendees get their eyes open to just start identifying what their limits are and knowing how far to go and push themselves?
Yeah, I think it's important to normalize that people struggle through medical school. I think a lot of people don't like to show it, but everybody has a bad day, and one in about four medical students have symptoms of depression or anxiety. So it's very prevalent because it's a hard thing to do. You're studying a lot. It's a lot of pressure. You have to perform. There's a lot, you're in debt. You have to pass the test. There's a lot of things that make medical school very difficult. Um, so everybody kind of has their limits, like you said, Wendy. But yeah, I think it's important to understand yourself and understand that you do need to do whatever it takes to make yourself well, whether that's talking to your friends, talking to your family, even talking to therapists. I highly recommend that. Getting mentors, and just knowing when it is time to take a break, because even if you want to get through something or you want to get through some work, you may not be in the right mindset to do so, and that might not be the best way to use your time efficiently. So it's actually sometimes more efficient to take a break and then to come back and be 100% focused on your work, and then 100% focus on your breaks, just like Brian was saying earlier. But I do think understanding what it is that where it is that you think you may be hitting your limit, and kind of giving yourself tools and preventing that along the way so that you don't hit the limit. And if you do, understanding, I need to take a step back, I need to take a break, I need to take 5 minutes to just sit down, whatever it is. And I think that definitely comes with time and with experience. And I think everybody's going to be a little bit different, and whatever it is that makes you sane and you happy, definitely that's what you got to do.
And Hannah, as a student, how do you take that time and work that balance and not feel guilty about it?
Yeah, that's a hard one actually, because I would always feel guilty about not studying and not doing my best, and not, always felt like I had to try my hardest all the time to be able to do well. But that's actually not the case. It's actually not true. Um, you have to work smarter. You work smarter, not harder. And when you learn how to do things efficiently, and you learn, very targeted things that go a long way, instead of kind of covering everything and doing, just putting your head down and working a bunch, that's not always the most fruitful way to get through things. But yeah, I do think that you know, you have to realize that you have to realize your limits, as I was kind of trying to say earlier, and just try to prevent yourself from getting there.
Yes, prevention is key. Prevention is key. Brian, as someone who's had his skin in the game longer than Danish and Hannah, what else do you want to add to this topic about just having that balance and not feeling guilty about it? What else is there that we need to know, or that you think is important for people joining us to do or not do as they are going on this journey?
The other thing that I would mention that I don't think has been emphasized tonight is that when we say taking time off and taking personal time, it's important how you decide what you're going to do with that personal time, because you really got to focus on things that are going to make you well. What I've seen a lot of people do throughout medical school and residency is, unfortunately, they'll think, oh, you know what, I'm going to take today off or tonight off. And then they end up going out and drinking at the bar until whatever time. And then they wake up Sunday morning and they're not refreshed. They're exhausted because they took that night off and they decided to do something that, you know, there's nothing particularly wrong with that if that's what you decide to do, but that's not going to refresh you. And so if you're taking the time off with the goal of refreshing yourself to make yourself more effective and efficient the next day, you know, that should involve things like, once sleeping, again, resting well, but also like physical activities, getting some outdoor time, you know, being in the sun, spending time with friends and family. You should focus on things that help build your own personal health. So, you know, be that with socializing or physical activity, things like that are the things that I would focus on as a
So it seems like we may have lost Brian. I know that he's on call and he talked about that balance, and now he is back out and changing lives, saving lives, and taking care of business. So he'll be joining us as soon as he can. But just to round that part up, it's just very important for everybody to really know what your limits are. Don't push yourself past those limits. Don't feel bad about taking time out for you. And also, as Danish mentioned, communication is key with your family members, with your loved ones, letting them know, hey, I'm going through a very busy time in my life and I need you to be a little understanding, and let people know what you need. So if you follow some of those tips, you should be okay. Don't quote me on that, but it should all work out in your favor. If you have more questions, though, as a student about maintaining that balance, be sure to stick around when I put our QR code up at the end so that you can schedule some one-on-one time with Hannah, Danish, or with Brian to really get some tips and some feedback on how you can work that balance for your particular situation. Now, I get a lot of questions from people, and I want to encourage you, before I go into this, to keep submitting your questions into the Q&A. You've been submitting some amazing ones, and I still have a few more that I'll get to before we leave this evening. But I come in contact with a lot of people who are completing their undergrads, and they want to know what else they should do to prepare for medical school so that they can add that into the mix of everything else that they have going on. So, Hannah, as someone being our most recent graduate, what else should people do if they're finishing up their undergrads and they're looking to go into medical school? What else should they do to prepare? And I want to ask you that specifically because I know you had so many other options and you chose to just, hey, make a beeline right into medical school, and you eliminated a lot of chatter. So what advice would you give to people?
Yeah, I think getting as much experience as you can in the medical field goes a long way. Being a scribe is amazing because you're not only shadowing a doctor, you're also being part of the treatment plan, and you're seeing patients. Things like being an EMT, being a first responder, you'll get a lot of experience seeing patients again, dealing with emergencies. Also research. Research is a big thing, and highly recommend getting involved in research early, because anything that you publish early on can follow you for forever. So if you, let's say you publish something in undergrad, you can use that in your medical school application, and then when you apply to residency, you can use that again. So research goes a long way, especially if you can get your name on a paper. What else? I think enjoying life in general, because once you're in it, you kind of have to gear up and get through it. So if you want to travel, if you have a travel bug, go travel. Like get your life in. Go see the world. Get it out of your system, because then you'll feel a lot more ready to enter medical school and ready to just hit the books. I think that's probably the main ones. You can work in a clinic, do medical assistant, pretty much anything to get your feet wet in the medical field. I think the main idea would be to, one, cement that you love the field, and two, to really get that experience early on, to be able to know how to interact with patients, how to behave in a hospital, how to act around other doctors, things like that.
Thank you so much. And Brian, I see you're back, and I know you had to jump off. Your beeper went off. So did you want to go ahead and finish up your thought, what you were saying?
Well, I don't know that I recall exactly where I was at. I think I was talking something about, focusing on the time you spend off and using it effectively to rest yourself. And I think that's something that I would emphasize as well, because how you spend that time off is just as important as, and what you're doing is as important as, just taking the time off for the sake of taking the time off.
Yes, very important. And I loved your analogy about, hey, going out and getting drunk and thinking you're going to get up the next morning to study. Like, no, don't use the time that way. So just make wise decisions with your time off so that you can still plan and be effective in the subsequent days. So thank you so much. And I'm glad you were able to rejoin us. I thought you had to go and put your cape on and go do some superhero stuff out in the field. So
oh no, nothing like that, thankfully.
Well, I'm glad you're still with us. So Danish, I know that, and you know this as well, we've gotten a ton of questions about the USMLE switching over to pass-fail. And since we're talking about balance and developing that balance and making sure, this is huge. Because everything that people have been grooming for, that score, that number is now going away, and it's all going to be pass fail. So can you talk to people about the possible impact of this switching to pass fail and how that may affect people who want to go into various specialties? Is there going to be more of a focus on step 2? What, in your professional opinion, should people expect as we are going through this new phase with dealing with the USMLE?
Right. As far as the impact of pass or fail, it's something so recent, and going through interview seasons for the past 3 years, that's one of the main things that main determinants that people were looking at to weed people out, because there was algorithms, computers had ways to filter people out based on their score. So what it kind of falls back on, and I guess the advice that I would give for these is, these exams don't focus so much on the score, focus more on the medical education. Think about it this way. This is the rest of your career. The information that you are gathering, that you are studying for, is the foundation of how good of a physician you will be in whatever specialty. The USMLE steps 1, 2, and 3, every single physician that practices in America has to take. Doesn't matter what specialty you're in. Now, if you study it with the mindset that, I just kind of want to get by, well, then that's the type of physician you're going to be. I'm just going to get by, and, if I misdiagnose a couple patients, what's the big deal? If you're that type of mindset, then be aware that you're probably not going to be a good doctor. All right. So if you go into it with the mindset thinking, I want to study as much of this as effectively and efficiently as possible, um, then that education and that foundation will carry over into your clinicals. And when it carries over into your clinicals and you're rounding on patients and your senior residents or the attending are asking you questions, you're going to know the answer to those questions and you'll be able to build on that knowledge. Um, you know, the USMLE, the information in there is just the basic, just the you can't understand multiplication if you don't understand addition and subtraction, really, and you can't understand calculus unless you know the basics of arithmetic and all that stuff. So it all builds on itself, and so whether a pass or fail is going to affect your admissions. What it will do is it'll re-emphasize other aspects of the application, such as your letters of recommendation, such as your extracurricular activities. Um, um, and so in order to get those really stellar letters of recommendation, you need to be able to impress people, the attendings and the senior staff as much as possible. And the only way to really do that is through your work ethic and your knowledge. And so I would still study very much for it, to the point where, when you take your specialty board exams, a lot of these questions are not out from left field. There's stuff that you studied for in your USMLE exams. Now I'll touch base just briefly on the extracurricular activities. As someone who's interviewed students since 2016, really, not only for medical school, but for undergraduate and for residency. Um, Extracurricular activities should be done in something that you have an interest in, and it should not be done as an embellishment for your CV or a resume. Okay. If you become an EMT, and if I'm interviewing you and you say, I did this EMT, I said, oh, wonderful. What hospital or ambulance company did you work for? Oh, I never really did. I just got the EMT thing. What that tells me is you're doing this to make yourself look good on a CV, and you can see right through it. So if you're going to do something, make sure it's something that you actually want to do and that you enjoy doing, and get some experience in it. If it's research, a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on research. Research is good, but it shouldn't be something that you feel is mandatory. If you have time to be an EMT and you don't really have time to do research, then spend all your time being an EMT and learn as much as you can about that field, uh, and devote yourself to it, because then that shows dedication and a willingness to do better and do better. But going back to the USMLE question, study for it as if it was scored, and because it will really truly help you in the rest of your career, and pick very wisely, so that other aspects of your application, such as extracurricular activities and letters of recommendation, reflect your true nature and who you are as a person and your knowledge base.
Thank you. Wow, you're dropping gems. I hope everyone who is joining us is appreciating all of this knowledge that is being given this evening. Now, Danish, you made a really great point about focusing on things that are of interest to you. Is there anything else that people joining us should be aware of when they're going into these medical school interviews, Danish?
Here's the thing: when you're going to an interview, the selection process, the admissions committee has selected you for a reason. Okay, you have made the cut. Whatever grades you had, whatever school you went to, whatever degree you got, whatever extracurricular activities you did, that all has already been reviewed. So when you do go into an interview, regardless of what it's for, I mean, I'll talk about medical school interview here because that's kind of what everyone's here for. It's very important to be yourself and to represent who you are as a person. Don't rehash your CV or resume. We've already seen it. We already know about that. So it's valuable time. If we had a timer and it was ticking away and you only had 2 minutes, you would want us to know as interviewers, parts about you that we cannot possibly figure out on paper. Okay, your personality, your interest. Sure, you can write your hobbies and interests, but you can elaborate on them, something special about you, so that you leave a lasting impression as to who you are as a person and not just another applicant, you know. And so it's very, very important to just be yourself. When you are yourself, you'll be amazed how much more you'll be able to answer questions truthfully and wonderfully. Rehearsed answers are picked up very easily. And so it's important to look through questions that could be asked about you so that you can do a better job of preparing and kind of coming up with an answer that's true. But don't come with a rehearsed script because a lot of times what might happen is you may come in with a rehearsed script and you'll go off script and then you'll get discombobulated and then not be able to effectively answer the question. So just be yourself, just and it'll be a much smoother and better experience for both people.
Yeah, I agree. It's easier. Just be yourself. You don't have to fake it. Just be you and let us get to know the real you, why you want to attend the university, why you want to go into medicine, and how you're going to help people and make a difference in the field. Now, we have some questions that came in. Hannah, I'm going to address this one to you. It's from Eliza. And Eliza wants to know, as a female looking to attend medical school, is it possible to start a family and attend medical school at the same time? Are the first 2 years of clinical rotations more demanding? Are the first 2 years or the clinical rotation years more demanding? I think that's what she's asking. Yes.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I myself don't have a family, my own family yet, but I know a lot of people who went in to medical school, married, engaged, and then sometime through residency had a baby, and are doing well. I think it's very possible, and I think it actually helps motivate you, and helps keep you grounded, and helps keep you sane. For people going to Grenada, there were a lot of people who took advantage of the married housing that they offer. So your partner can come and live with you on campus. People took their significant other and their dogs or their children with them. We had a family where in my class actually. He was my friend, and his wife came with him and his 3 little kids, and they actually would do donut fundraisers as a nonprofit activity. And his wife and his kids would participate in making the donuts, and they became kind of this little famous family that sold donuts every morning. And so I think it's very much possible, and you kind of have you can definitely find the ideal times to do things like get engaged, get married, and start a family. I know a lot of people who had their weddings after at the end of their 4th year of medical school. That's kind of seemed like an ideal time to in terms of having free time, having already matched, and waiting to start residency. So yeah, I think it's very much possible. And for me, I think the hardest years were the first 2 years, just because it's a lot of studying, very time intensive, pressure of scoring well or passing step 1 is pretty high. And it's a lot of material that you have to learn very quickly and review and remember for 2 years from now. So I think that was pretty heavy. The 3rd and 4th years are also difficult, but in a different way. You're in your clinical rotation, so you're physically there for half or most of the day, and you also have to balance studying, and you also have to balance your personal life. But I think for me, if I were to answer that question, it was the first 2 years, because I would spend hours and hours just studying, and that's kind of what it took to get through. But yeah, I think it's very much possible, in short.
Anything is possible, right?
Right.
Put your mind to it. And we also have a question that came in from Mary. Mary is asking this question of all speakers, so all panelists, Hannah, Danish, and Brian. would you share specific resources that help you better manage your time at SGU? Really good question, Mary. So Mary is speaking about Google Calendar, phone apps, anything that you use, the technology that help you manage your time at SGU. Brian, they had some technology out when you attended, right? No, I'm just playing.
Well,
I need you're gonna have to think back a little bit, but what other tools did you use to be successful?
It's funny you joke about that because at least when I was at Grenada, and I've heard this from people that were there before me, that they were a bit behind compared to standards in the US. So I mean, this was back in like 2010. That was just like when iPhone or certain like smart devices were coming out, and so my cell phone when I was at the island of Grenada was one that I purchased there, and it was actually the green screen phone with the snake game on it. So
wow.
So I did not have.
You and I both, Brian. You and I both.
You too. So I enjoyed that because again, I felt like I did not have distractions as a result of that. I didn't have any fun apps or any messaging systems. So for that reason, I don't have much in terms of technology and apps and things that were helpful. So the way I went about that instead was I had a pen and paper. So I mean, regular studying, like just classroom and stuff, taking notes, studying, going through questions, all of the basic studying stuff. What I found really important though was that when there was like a big exam, so especially like the USMLEs, I would actually find like I would map out like months in it. Like if I was going to study for like 2 or 3 months for step one I probably studied for like 2 months, I believe. I had like every day, like from this hour to this hour, I was going to get through these questions. From this hour to this hour, I was going to read through this book, and down to like the page number that I was going to have to get through. And then at the end of the week, I would always have like a few hours or a part of the day where it'd be like, okay, this is my catch-up time. Anything I didn't catch up on during that week, that was the time that I was going to, try and finish all those things. And so that was really an effective way that I had everything, scheduled perfectly, that I knew exactly what I was required. So I didn't have to think like when I got to the library, like, oh, what am I going to do now? What should I focus on? And I knew that I was going to finish everything I needed to study by the time the test came. So that's something that I did that I thought was helpful, especially for the big exams.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing that. And, you can never go wrong with good old pen and paper. I don't care how many apps you have. I always go back to my pen and paper. Danish, what about you? What apps or resources did you use that helped you to be successful with managing your time?
So just like Brian, I was on the island in 2010 also with antiquated phone. Pen and paper, honestly. I had a daily planner that I would down. These are the days I have lecture. These are the days I have labs. This is the day exam. And it's very, very, very important, like Brian's saying, that you have to schedule out how much you're going to do. You cannot cram in medical school. If you're going to try to cram, you'll find very quickly how quickly you will fail, actually. For example, if you have like 100 pages, I'm just giving you an example. If you have 100 pages to read and you have an exam in 5 days, well, you got to read 25 pages a day, and you got to write that down in your plan. And it's very important to stay on, because like it was mentioned earlier, it's extremely hard to catch up because the workload is so much every day. Again, SGU makes it very manageable. Everything's very well planned out. The curriculum is very, very well planned out, and so nothing is offered or nothing is asked of you that is not feasible. You're your own worst enemy if you don't schedule things out and you don't adhere to a schedule, and that's not special just to SGU. That's for anything. If you don't plan things out and you don't adhere to a schedule or plan, you're not going to succeed. But SGU does have a lot of resources, group study sessions, DES, professors have office hours that allow you to go in and ask questions. And it's actually encouraged. Professors are amazing. So take advantage of that. Some of these professors are, very, very, very well-learned people who have advanced degrees in each one of the topics that you need to study. And so I would personally advise anyone who ends up going to SGU, utilize the professors, utilize the study sessions, utilize the group sessions, because if you're stuck on a topic that you don't understand, somebody else may think about it in a way different than you would, and save yourself, hours of agony trying to figure out, something that you can learn in 10, 15 minutes. But even with all the technology out there, pen, pencil, and a daily planner goes a long, long way. And if you're not that type of person, Google Calendar is great. It serves the same function. It syncs to your phone. You can take your phone to Grenada, just switch out the SIM card, and voila, it works. Even though I was there a long time ago, I did visit recently and I was able to do that. So it's super simple.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who joined. And now I'd like to have our panelists give you some words of wisdom, just some brief advice, sentiment, thoughts on what do they wish they knew when they were starting this journey? What would they advise to you as you are embarking on this, and how you can maintain your work-life balance? Just some sentiment. So Brian, since you have been out a little longer than everyone else, what would you recommend? What's your words of wisdom? What are you sharing? What do you want people to walk away with?
Yeah, I mean, everything we've talked about, but my final piece of advice is to just keep going at it, because if it's truly your dream and it's what you want to do and you want to do it for the right reasons, then you just got to keep pushing forward. At times it's going to seem impossible. You're going to say, there's no way that I can complete what I need to do. There's no way I can memorize all of this information. And there's no way that I can, go into the hospital and do a 30-hour shift in the hospital. And every step of the way, you're going to encounter a new challenge that you just didn't think was possible. And what you have to realize is how many people have gone through this before you, that all of us have gone through this and thousands of others. And so I just want to reassure you that it is possible. It's going to seem like it's not, but you have to keep pushing through. And again, take care of yourself along the way, because it is a marathon. And so at no point is there a time where I'd say, a lot of people say, I just got to get into medical school and then it's going to get better. And then I just got to get to clinicals and then it's going to get better. And I got to get through residency and then it'll get better. And I got to get to attending and then it's going to be better. Well, to be honest, at every point it's difficult. There are different challenges, so there are different stressors, but it's always going to be difficult. Being a physician is a tough field to be in. It's something that you really have to be a lifelong learner and worker. So, I don't have the option anymore that I can say, oh, I didn't study that in medical school, or, oh, that even that new disease was not even discovered when I was in school. So I can't help you. I'm still responsible for that patient. And so, continue working and actually enjoy what you're doing, because it's something that if you're going down this pathway, it's what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And you want to be happy doing it, or again, you won't do it well. So good luck to everybody.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Danish, what advice would you give to everyone?
I think Brian touched on most of it. Advice that's left would just be stay focused, communicate well with friends and family, know your limits, take the breaks that you need, and good time management. It's really ironic that I'm talking about that, because that's something I'm still working on, even as attending now. Good time management will take you make the difference between success and mediocre. So time management is what I would focus on.
Perfect, thank you. And Hannah, what would you like to add? What parting words do you have for our attendees this evening?
Yeah, I think find your wellness, and everybody's gonna be different. And so whatever it is that makes you happy, that resets you, that brings you life and joy, find that. Make sure you make time for that and schedule that in, because the whole journey is a long marathon, and it's kind of a requirement to enjoy it along the way. I also think having a good support system is a big point. So find those people that you can rant to when you're angry, frustrated, tired, sad, whoever those people are. Find good mentors. Find people who will guide you, who want to look out for you, who want to teach you and help you. And it's a good idea to start even here, because we're here. We want to be here. I want to be here because I like helping people who are going through the same thing that I went through. And feel free to reach out. And that's pretty much it. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. I want to give a round of applause to Hannah, Brian, Danish. Thank you so much for taking time out and for joining us. I know that you're busy, and I really appreciate all the time and the insight that you shared with everyone this evening. For everyone joining, thank you for taking time out of your evening and joining us also. Now, as promised, you will be able to connect with Danish, with Brian, or with Hannah, or all three, if you have additional questions for them. So I'm going to put up their QR code so that you can schedule some appointments and be able to connect with them, so you can get some one-on-one time in. So some of those extra questions that you have, you can ask them individually and really get your game plan going as you transition into medical school. Before I turn it over to Emily, I also want to let you know that we still have John on, who's available to answer questions about anybody who is classified as an international student. So if you'd like to know how you can attend medical school at SGU and come back to the United States to practice medicine, John and his team are the people that you need to talk with. He also will have a session immediately following this presentation, giving you information on some of the steps you can take. I'll have Emily or John go ahead and submit that link in the chat so that you can schedule to attend if that's something that applies to you. Thank you so much again for joining. My name is Wendy Mathis. I know you could have been doing a lot of different things this evening, but you chose to spend some time with us, and it really means a lot. So please, I look forward to seeing you again at one of our future events. Hopefully we can see each other soon at some point in person, or I may catch you on the island of Grenada. So please remember, as you progress on in your day-to-day activities and life, remember that balance. Remember to try to do things that you love. Keep the communication open with your loved ones. Let people know what you need so that you can be successful. And always remember to be kind to yourself as well as others. Emily, back to you.
Wow, thank you very much, Wendy. What a wonderful session this evening, and what wonderful advice from our graduates as well too. So thank you to Brian, Danish, and Hannah for all the amazing advice that you provided our attendees this evening. I was scribbling away. I'm a big note taker, but I did notice that one thing, and I kind of chuckled too. I'm not a morning person, so I would say that could be one reason why I didn't go into the medical field. But I think the advice of making sure that you have that time to refill your tank, you have that support system, whether it's your family or your friends or your fellow classmates, exercise, make sure you eat, make sure you sleep as well too. You have to take care of yourself so that you can be that best physician out there as possible. So again, wonderful, wonderful advice that we got this evening. Thank you again for taking your time to spend it with us. We greatly appreciate it. As a reminder too, we are still accepting applications for our August 2021, our August 2021 class. So if you're someone like Hannah that didn't want to wait and you want to get a jump start on your medical school education, now is the time. You can use one of those QR codes. You can reach out to Wendy or I. You can reach out to anyone on the admissions team, and we'll be happy to help you through that entire process. We'll be standing by for just a couple of moments to answer any of those remaining burning questions that you have that you weren't able to ask during the actual presentation itself. But we also have some upcoming events that you can attend as well. So this is a great opportunity for you to maybe pull your parents in, pull that support system in so they too can learn more about St. George's University. Our next event will be on Thursday, the 22nd. I've got all my days and my years mixed up today. So our next event will be on Thursday, the 22nd at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And that's a general information session where we talk about many different things about SGU. We talk about the USMLE clinicals, matching, as well as the support that we're able to provide our students. After that, we have another Doctors on Call, which is similar to the event that you attended this evening, and that's a focus on family medicine, and that will be at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I did drop the link in the chat there, so you can check that out, register for another event, and continue learning more about St. George's University. So again, thank you for joining us, and Wendy and I look forward to seeing you on the island of Grenada in the upcoming months. Have a wonderful evening.